Good afternoon, students. Now we're in week 6. And so this week we're going to study semantics, pragmatics, and discourse analysis. So without further ado, I will share my screen. So chapter 9, Semantics, explores various aspects of linguistic meaning, primarily focusing on semantics and related concepts. Semantics explain how words, phrases, and sentences convey meaning through a discussion of different types of word meanings, like literal versus figurative meanings, and relationships between words, such as polysemy, homonymy, synonyms, antonyms, and hyponymy. Chapter 9 highlights the importance of context in understanding meaning, introducing ideas like semantic roles and presupposition. Furthermore, Chapter 9 briefly touches upon wordplay, metonymy, and collocation, illustrating how language can be used creatively and naturally, ultimately enhancing communication skills. Semantics is the study of meaning in language. It focuses how words, phrases, and meaning, semantics focuses on words, phrases, and sentences, and how sentences convey meaning, and how we understand the meaning in different contexts. Here are some key concepts of semantics, meaning of words. As you probably already know, words can have different meanings based on context. For example, the word bank can mean a place where you keep money or the side of a river. Literal versus figurative meaning. Literal meaning is the straightforward dictionary meaning of a word. For example, straightforward meaning, he kicked the ball, means exactly that, he kicked the ball. Figurative meaning involves expressions that have a different meaning than their literal interpretation. For example, it's raining cats and dogs means it's raining heavily, not that animals are falling from the sky. Polysemy refers to a single word with multiple related meanings, such as foot, meaning the part of the body or the bottom of a mountain. Homonymy, or better known as homonyms, occurs when two words sound the same but have different meanings and origins, such as bat, the animal, and bat, the sports equipment. Synonym and antonyms. Synonyms are words that have similar meaning, such as happy and joyful. Antonyms are words with opposite meanings, such as hot and cold. And if you want to expand your vocabulary, you should buy a Roget's Thesaurus, because a Roget's Thesaurus is a dictionary of synonyms and antonyms. Okay, hyponymy. This concept involves a relationship where one word is a more specific term under a broader category. For example, rose is a hyponym of flower because all roses are flowers, but not all flowers are roses. Semantic roles. These describe the function of a word or phrase in a sentence. Common roles include agent, the doer of an action, such as the chef cooked the meal. Theme, the entity that is affected by the action, such as the meal in the same sentence. Experiencer, the one who experiences something, such as she felt joy. She is the experiencer. Context and ambiguity. The context in which language is used can greatly influence meaning. A word or sentence that is clear in one situation might be ambiguous or confusing in another. For example, he went to the bank could refer to a financial institution or a riverbank depending on context. Presupposition. This refers to the background information that is assumed to be true when someone makes a statement. For example, saying John's brother is tall presupposes that John has a brother. Understanding semantics helps us grasp how meaning is conveyed in language and how it can change depending on various factors, enhancing our communication skills. Polysemy is when one word has multiple meanings. And so, for example, the word bank, we just did this, okay? So this is this one's a little bit of a repeat. The word bank can mean a financial institution where you keep money or the side of a river. And so, for instance, everything is about semantics, 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 context, context, context. So if I were to say the two lovers made love and had a picnic by the bank, well, that's not a great sentence, but it's by the riverbank. Or John went to, this is a better one. John went to deposit money at the bank. Okay, so you know that he's not going to deposit money at a riverbank. Okay, that's a better example. Okay. Anyway, so that's polysemy. In other words, you have the word bank can have multiple meanings. So are you going to foot the bill, or is your foot inflamed with pain because you have a broken toe? So foot the bill, meaning pay the bill, or your foot where you fell on your, I've fallen on my toe. Okay, so I know what that's like. It does hurt. So that is polysemy. Let's say polysemy. You can see how rarely I use that word. It is when you have one word with multiple meanings. Wordplay is a clever or humorous use of words that can involve puns, jokes, or playing with meaning. For example, time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. So this play on the different meaning of flies and can create humor by surprising the listener. Wordplay often makes language fun and engaging. And one of the last things you learn when you learn another language or another culture is wordplay, is jokes, because once again, semantics involves context, context, context. You need to know the context or the background information behind the culture in order to understand a joke. So when I was in France, it was so hard. I didn't understand the jokes. So that's the hardest thing. That's why when you learn another language, it's like a window to another culture. And that's last week's Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Metonymy is a figure of speech where one word or phrase is substituted for another with which it is closely associated. And so this is very poetry, in which in poetry, we use a lot of words. For instance, if you say that someone has really cold eyes, or that someone's very frigid in his personality, it means that someone is very distant. So that one word or phrase, cold, rigid, is substituted for someone who's just very, cold-hearted, someone who doesn't have emotions, someone who's a robot. So when you use a figure of speech like he acts like a robot, that's a figure of speech. So for example, the White House announced instead of the president announced. And so that's a figure of speech. And so if you study literature, all of this becomes obvious. Metonymy helps us convey ideas more succinctly and can create vivid imagery. Collocation refers to the way certain words naturally go together or are often used in combination. For example, we say we make a decision rather than do a decision, or strong coffee instead of powerful coffee. Or you say, you don't say I go to home. You say I go home. And so that's known as a collocation. And that's because go usually takes two. I go to the store. I go to the hospital. So why not? I go to the home, right? And so, but in English, go to the home means you're going to the nursing home. I don't think so if you're young and, whatever. So for ESL students, it's collocation is something you just have to learn from being around native speakers of the language. So using the right collocations makes your language sound more fluent and accurate. So if you're an ESL student and you use the wrong collocation, people are going to not understand you, okay? So that's why you have to understand collocation. Understanding these concepts can enrich your grasp of language and improve your communication skills, making it easier to use words effectively and creatively, especially with figures of speech. It's a great way, if you use one word for another, it's a great way to add imagery to your poems. So I love to write poems. And so this chapter, okay, chapter 9, Semantics, synthesizes key concepts, primarily focusing on the study of meaning in language, closely related linguistic phenomena. Understanding semantics is crucial for comprehending how meaning is conveyed, interpreted, and manipulated in communication. And so semantics talks about how words, phrases, and sentences communicate meaning and how this meaning is understood within various contexts. It encompasses, that is, semantics encompasses several core principles: meaning of words and contextual variation. The meaning of a word is not always fixed. It can shift based on its context. Literal versus figurative meaning. Literal is the straightforward dictionary definition. Figurative meaning involves expressions where the interpretation differs from literal words, such as slang. He hit a brick. He break a leg, right? Or hit the hay. That's it. I wanted to remember. She hit the hay. Literally, you're not going to go and hit the hay. Literally, hit the hay means you go to bed. Polysemy and homonyms. These concepts describe how words can have multiple meanings. Polysemy occurs when a single word has multiple related meanings. The word foot exemplifies this, referring to both a part of the body or the bottom of a mountain with an underlying connection. The source also states that in polysemy, the meanings are connected by the idea of a place, either for financial transactions or the edge of a water, as seen with bank. Homonyms refer to two words that sound the same but have different meanings and origins. The word bat is animal versus sports equipment is a clear illustration. Synonyms and antonyms. Synonyms are words possessing similar meanings, like happy and joyful. Antonyms are words with opposite meanings, like hot and cold. Hypotony, this describes a hierarchical relationship where one word is a more specific term under a broader category. For instance, rose versus flowers, chair versus furniture. What else? I can't think of off the top of my head. Any kind of category. It's similar to the difference between count nouns and non-count nouns. But anyway, semantic roles. These define the function a word or phrase plays within a sentence. So that's just like grammar, subject, verb, object. Agent, that's like the subject of the sentence, the entity performing an action. The entity theme, the entity directly affected by the action. That's similar to the object of a sentence. Experiencer, the one who undergoes or feels something. Okay, that's similar to pronouns and subject of a sentence. Context and ambiguity. The surrounding context is paramount in determining meaning. A statement like he went to the bank is inherently ambiguous. Its meaning dependent on whether the context points to a financial institution or a riverbank. So context is essential in avoiding confusion. Presupposition. This refers to the background information that is assumed to be true. Wordplay is defined as a clever or humorous use of words that can involve puns, jokes, or playing with the meaning and sounds of words. This occurs a lot in poetry. Metonymy, a figure of speech where one word or phrase is substituted with another which it is closely associated. The common example of the White House announced instead of the president announced illustrates how a related entity, the building, stands in for the people within it. So metonymy allows for a more succinctly conveying ideas and create a vivid imagery. Collocation refers to the way certain words naturally go together or are often used in combination. So the example, make a decision, not do a decision, demonstrates how native speakers instinctively combine words in specific natural sounding ways. And also different collocations have different meanings. So ESL students have to learn the difference between look to, look at, and look for, and the different meanings thereof. Okay. So understanding semantics and related concepts like wordplay, metonymy, and collocation is fundamental to grasping how meaning is constructed, interpreted, and manipulated in language. These principles are vital for effective communication, allowing for a clearer expression, comprehension, and even humorous use of language. And in all the different languages, everybody's got different collocations. Okay, so that's something that for an ESL student, the best way to learn collocations is just immerse yourself in the country and then just listen to the native speakers. Chapter 10 explains pragmatics as the study of how language meaning is shaped by its context, going beyond literal interpretations. And so pragmatics introduce several core concepts, including context, deixis, which refers to words whose meaning depends on the situation. So basically, pragmatics gets into even more of the details of what is semantics. And so you can have semantics as like the broad umbrella, okay? And then the subcategory being pragmatics, because it gets even more and more nuanced. So pragmatics is the study of how language meaning is shaped by context and in deixis and inference, the process of drawing conclusions from indirect statements. So chapter 10 describes speech acts as actions performed through language, explores how politeness is conveyed through linguistic strategies, and outlines Grice's maxims of conversation as principles for effective communication. Understanding these elements is crucial for interpreting nuanced language and fostering successful social interactions. And so when you learn a new language, you're thrown to the wolves, as I say, because you don't understand the context. You don't understand the pragmatics. And for instance, to be polite. So one of the examples is that pragmatics explores politeness. In English, do you mind opening the window? Which means, please open the window. It's not asking whether you agree or not agree with opening a window. And French has the same thing. The different expressions that you have to learn to understand the language. And so in French, it was pouvez-vous fermer, pouvez-vous mettre vos vêtements dans le, in the closet. Gotta say closet. But anyway, put your clothes into the closet. Do you mind putting your clothes in the closet? And I actually took it literally. I thought, oh, I don't mind because I had my clothes under the bed in my suitcase. And basically she was trying to say, I want you to clean up the room and put your clothes into that closet so that the room looks neat. I totally missed it and thought, oh, she's telling me I have a choice between not cleaning up my room, the choice between putting my clothes in the closet or putting my clothes under the bed, keeping my clothes under the bed. The next day, when I didn't get it, the next day she got mad at me, and then she just simply said, all politeness was gone. Put those, bad word, clothes into the closet. And I'm like, oh, okay. Usually we learn all of this politeness of pragmatics as children. Children have to be taught when to say please, when to say thank you, when to be polite. And so we learn the pragmatics of politeness from our parents. When you tell a child, go wave to the goodbye, say bye-bye, that's pragmatics, because you're teaching the nuances of society, what it takes to be polite. Okay, if a kid just goes Okay, you would tell the kid, you can't stare like that. That's rude. Okay, that sort of thing. All of that is something that you learn as you're a kid growing up in that culture. In other cultures, staring, or if you're talking to someone, in American culture, you want to look someone in the eye to indicate honesty. In other cultures, you look someone in the eye, it's just totally rude. It means you're not respecting them. Okay. And so if you are new to that culture, you're not going to know that. So you got a lot of Americans go to, say, Japan and stare at people like this and think they're being honest and they're being transparent and being friendly. And then the Japanese person is thinking, what a rude American. And so pragmatics is how you behave yourself in different cultures, that it's the very nuance of your social behavior. Okay. And so it's understanding not just language and context, but culture is also conveyed through linguistic strategies like, do you mind, please? So that those are examples of linguistic strategies that people learn to be polite, instead of just saying, put your clothes with the bad word in it into the closet, which I finally understood. To go, oops, she got really mad. Anyway, and so you outline, you have to know the nuances. Uh, anyway, pragmatics is the study of how people understand and use language in nuanced context. It goes beyond literal meaning of words to explore how meaning is shaped by the situation, the speaker, and the listener. And if you don't get it, then you get the curse words that come after that. All politeness, off the window. And she shows her true self. She's really pissed that I didn't put my clothes. She thinks it's all over the place, but actually I put all my clothes in my suitcase, so it wasn't really on the floor. I didn't think it was messy, but she did. So there you go, a clash, all because I didn't understand the pragmatics of the situation. So context is the situation in which language is used, and it greatly influences meaning. For example, the phrase, can you pass the salt, is not just questioning about someone's ability to pass the salt, but often a polite request. Understanding the context helps us interpret the intended meaning. Otherwise, the person will get mad at you and start using curse words, and then there's no question about what that person wants. You don't want to get the person mad like that. Deixis refers to words that depend on the context to convey their meaning. And so deixis is kind of like here and there. Deixis means that you're pointing, okay, here, there, you, and I. So, for example, I am here means something different depending on who is speaking and where they are. These words point to specific things based on who is involved in the conversation. And deixis becomes so much more important when we talk about discourse analysis, turn taking. Whose turn is it to talk? Is it his turn, her turn, my turn, your turn? Okay. And so that differs in different cultures. Like I mentioned, if you're the American that stares and then you interrupt, you're rude. Yeah. So you got to learn the pragmatics of the politeness, and you got to learn to take your turn. That's the diaxis. It refers to who gets to speak. So it's similar to turn taking. Inference is the process of drawing conclusions based on statements and context. I drew the wrong conclusion about, oh, well, I guess she doesn't mind having my clothes onto the floor. Actually, she did. She wanted the clothes in the closet. It went right over my head. Inference is the process of drawing conclusions based on statements and context. Listeners often have to read between the lines to understand what is meant. For example, if someone says, it's cold in here, they might be implying that they want a window closed without directly asking. These nuances are like so hard for ESL students. And I remember somebody else, a friend of mine, and then she didn't understand the difference between a laundry room and a washroom. And so in a laundry room, you can hang your clothes to dry, but in a washroom, you only go to the bathroom. But in her language, a washroom is a laundry room, and so on and so forth. And so she totally was hanging her clothes in a bathroom, and they all got mad at her. And then she was cleaning her dishes in the sink, of the bathroom and didn't understand. Yeah, anyway, so inference, when you draw the wrong conclusions because you're in a different culture, forget it. So that's what you teach when you're a little kid. Your mother says, you don't touch that, you don't do this, and you don't put your whatever your finger up your nose in public, otherwise people will infer that you're a pig or a slob. Oh, so you're not born with all of these pragmatics. You have to learn it. Speech acts are the actions performed through speaking. For instance, saying I apologize is not just a statement, it's an action of apologizing. Speech acts can be categorized into different types, such as direct speech acts, where the meaning is clear, such as put your enclosed into the closet, or indirect speech acts like, do you mind? Do you mind putting your clothes in the closet? Or could you please close the door, which is a polite request, which went straight over my head. That's an indirect speech act. And so when you do an indirect speech act with ESL students, it can go over that person's head. And so that's why you have to, when you teach ESL, if you're going to be teaching culture, you have to differentiate for that ESL student the difference between a direct speech act, which means you do it now, and then you have to teach the student what we call conditional statements like could you, would you, do you mind, all have to be spelled out for an ESL student, or it's going to go over their head, because the way we say politeness differs from language to language and culture to culture. Okay, and this goes with body language as well. If I were to say do like this, hey, come over here, in other cultures, that is obscene. You see, so you've got to learn your culture. So politeness, that's all pragmatics. That's all nuances. The secret of the soup is, it's all semantics. Politeness refers to how people use language to be respectful or considerate. It includes strategies like using indirect language, hedging, such as I sort of think, and softening in requests, such as would you mind? And that has to be taught, for the ESL student, but they're not going to know that. Understanding politeness helps navigate social interactions. No kidding. She goes, put your bad word clothes into that bad word closet, and maintain positive relationships. And someone's telling you that bad word and then telling you like this, that's not a good relationship. Maxims of conversation are principles that guide effective communication, known as Grice maxims. Maxim of quantity, provide the right amount of information. Maxim of quality, say only what you believe to be true. Maxim of relation, to be relevant in your responses. Maxim of manner, to be clear and orderly in your communication. Pragmatics is essential for effective communication as it helps us understand the nuances, it's all in the semantics of language in social interaction and interpret meaning based on context. I could tell you, I can go on forever about all the stupid things that I did when I stayed in France. I only tip of the iceberg, oh my God, it's because I didn't understand the very nuances of what somebody wanted. I understood the broad idea, which is not good enough. So that's what it is. You have to understand the nuances, So chapter 11 offers an overview of discourse analysis, defining it as the study of language use beyond individual sentences with broader communicative contexts. Discourse analysis highlights key concepts such as cohesion and coherence, explaining how grammatical links and logical flow contributes to a text understandability. Chapter 11 explores speech events and turn-taking, examining the structured nature of conversations and social interactions. Chapter 11 introduces Coe's cooperative principle and implicatures, illustrating how unspoken meaning are conveyed and understood. Finally, the importance of background knowledge, context, schemas, and scripts is emphasized, revealing how pre-existing mental frameworks influence communication and interpretation. Discourse analysis is the study of how language is used in spoken or written communication beyond just individual sentences. Discourse analysis focuses on the larger context of conversation, text, and social interactions to understand how meaning is constructed and conveyed. What is discourse? Discourse refers to any stretch of language, such as a conversation, an article, a speech, or a social media post. Discourse analysis examines how these pieces of language function in communication. Cohesion and coherence. Cohesion means the grammatical and lexical links that hold a text together. For example, using pronouns like he or they refer back to nouns that helps avoid repetition and makes a text cohesive. Oh, even that one example, it differs in different languages. Different languages have different ideas of what's considered cohesive. In English, if you have a subject, we would say, John went to the store. He came back with the groceries. If he then went home. By the time you hit the third he, you need to put John. So you can't say John, he. Because after a while, the reader's going to go, he, who. They don't remember who that is. So you have to, especially if you have more than one man or woman or whatever in the sentence. And so John, he, John. And so that's how you keep your essays from going too ambiguous. But in Japan, okay, you could say John and then he throughout the entire chapter. And it's not ambiguous. And so the idea of cohesiveness also differs from culture to culture. So cohesion, so the use of pronouns and cohesion to hold a text together differs from culture to culture. Cohesion refers to how ideas in a text or conversation are organized and make sense to the reader or listener. And so for a Japanese speaker, you just have to mention the subject once, and he makes perfect sense to a Japanese speaker. But if you do that in English, the person will forget he, who. By the third sentence, they go, who are you talking about again? Yeah, So a coherent text flows logically and is easy to understand. Speech events are specific instances of communication, such as a casual chat or a formal presentation. Each speech event has its own rules and social expectations. Turn-taking. In conversations, people take turns speaking. Discourse analysis studies how people know when it's their turn to talk and how interruptions or overlaps happen. This is important for understanding the flow and dynamics of a conversation. And so even in other cultures, fillers are when you say something like that's not in your chapter. This is more linguistic lingo. I know I'm going beyond your textbook anyway. Fillers are like, huh? Oh, that sort of thing. And in other cultures, and ouch. I mean, those are all fillers. And in other cultures, like French, they don't say or anything. They go ben, j'en sais rien, ben, or something like that. Ben. And also in French, if you don't say ouch, aïe. Okay. So all of these fillers also have to be properly learned. They're also the nuances of culture. So that's why when you learn a language, you learn a culture. Sapir-Whorf. So, and also you got to learn when to take your turn. The cooperative principle. This principle, introduced by philosopher H.P. Grice, suggests that people typically work together to communicate effectively. The four maxims of quantity, quality, relation, and manner guide speakers and listeners in maintaining meaningful and successful conversations. This means you have to learn the different turn-taking of different cultures. You have to learn the different ways in different cultures write and have cohesion in there. In other words, like Japan has just that one subject, he, for instance, okay? Otherwise, if you speak let's say you're speaking Japanese, but you start to you use your English grammar because you're so used to it. So you would say in Japanese, John went to the store, he went to, went home, and now John again. And then the Japanese speaker is going to think, you're way redundant. Why do you keep saying the same thing over and over again? So yeah, so you have to learn the culture. That's why learning the language is learning the culture. Implicature refers to what is suggested in a conversation without being directly stated. For example, the closet example. Do you mind putting your stupid clothes? Okay, she didn't use the word stupid the first time she asked. She was polite, but because I didn't get it, she started using that bad word that starts with F in front of ing, clothes into the F, ing closet. Then I'm like, oops. Anyway, background knowledge and context help people understand language. No kidding. I didn't know that. This includes knowing about the topic and the situation in which communication takes place. This knowledge helps listeners make sense of implied meanings or cultural references. Woo! Yeah, like that just went all. That's why you've got to teach ESL students all those. It's called the conditional, conditional statements. And if you study an ESL grammar book, the chapter, I think it's chapter 2 or 3 within the grammar book, that you teach them all the polite inferences and all the difference. There is a difference in English between would you, could you, might you. And you have to teach those nuances because might you is the most polite. And then could you, would you, a little less polite. Do you think ESL student's going to know the difference? I don't think so. Schemas and scripts are mental frameworks that help people understand and predict social situations. This means that do you have previous experience or knowledge about such and such a topic? And so this is very relevant for teachers. I always look at my students to make sure they have the mental script or schema. It's called a scaffolding. And so when you teach something like language, you want to go right up just a little above that person's competence, communicative competence, and not too far over where that person's going to go, huh? And so if the person lacks mental schema, then that person's going to be lost. For instance, in Asian culture, you always go by the group, but the Westerners, his mental schema or script in his head is, oh, the individual is what counts. I can do whatever I want, therefore I'm what's important. And so if someone like individualist goes into a group-like culture, you're going to have a clash because you don't have the mental script in your head, knowledge of context, that it's the group that's important, not you. Okay, so at a restaurant, we follow a script that includes ordering food, eating, and paying the bill. And in the United States, part of the restaurant script is it's voluntary if you want to tip the waiter. In the United States, if the waiter gives really good service, you give really big tip. But in Europe, you always give a tip, regardless. Okay, because that's part of the service. Okay, and that script of the American way of not leaving a tip if you think the service is bad is way rude in Europe. So you have to have the right script, cultural script, and know the tradition, the order in which things work in order to function in that society, or people will think you're totally rude. So discourse analysis studies how these scripts influence communication. Discourse analysis provides valuable insight into how language works in real-life situations, revealing the complexities of communication and social interaction. And so, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes when I went abroad. When I went to Taiwan, for instance, in Taiwan, even if a person doesn't know you very much, they can put their hand around you, okay? Let's say if you're another female, you don't know them very well, but they put their hand around you because they're trying to say, I'm being friendly. I'm just saying hello, as opposed to, being rude, right? And so I went, and I was used to, if I didn't know that person really well, I'm used to having some personal space because that's so American. And to have someone you don't really know that well suddenly put their hand around you, they can tell you're not comfortable. They get insulted, offended even. Why, you don't like the way I put my hand around you? You think you're better than me or something? Like, huh? Where did that come from? That's because I lack the schema, the mental script. And so therefore, there's so many differences. And when you travel, you really need to learn a little bit of the culture or you're going to get in trouble, because in the United States, yeah, you need to, and then the other way around too, so then you have to learn to relax. Let that person put the arm around you. And I remember when I was I can go on and on about that topic. But anyway, So that's semantics in a nutshell. It's all about context. Context is everything in semantics. So week 7, okay, talked overload because I did 3 chapters instead of 2. And so in week 7, that's going to be the last week that we're going to have anything new. So congratulations on just about finishing the class. So week 7, we're going to do chapter 7, grammar, and then chapter 8, syntax. And also grammar differs from culture to culture. Not everybody has subject-verb agreement. Okay, that's just English. Okay, has that. And not every language has a past tense either. And on all the tenses, like in Chinese, they don't have all these different tenses. And so when you teach, I think Chinese has about 3 tenses and English has about 12 tenses. And so in Chinese, you have 1 past tense, 1 present tense, and 1 future tense. So imagine a Chinese person trying to learn English, and you have maybe 4 different past tenses, 4 different, future tenses, and so on and so forth. Whoa, that goes way over their head. You got to spend a lot of time, accentuating the difference. What is the difference of this past tense versus that past tense? Because they don't have that difference in their language. So even grammar is different from language to language. And if you speak Spanish, for instance, this a lot of people already know, especially we're in California. There's so many Spanish speakers. In Spanish, I can say he has a house red. That makes sense. But then, in English, it's got to be he has a red house. So everybody knows that one. So that's one easy, commonplace grammatical, cultural difference that, people of Spanish speaking and French, anybody Latin, actually, any Latin language all has that same, grammar and syntax. But we're not going to really talk about other languages and other cultures. We're simply going to focus on English grammar and what is English grammar and what is English syntax. And then when you start taking other linguistics classes, the focus will not be so much on English. You'll get to the fun part of different cultures. Okay. So in my week 8, I will add in what your textbook leaves out, that sort of thing. Because it's a very basic, just the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of linguistics. And so anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So if you have any questions, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the Professor H writing channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to, feel free to contact me and email me. I'm getting tired to the end of the day. Anyway, so have a great week.